Hey everybody, welcome back to It's Too Late to Apologize Book Reviews. I'm Stella, and today I'm going to be doing a tagged video. This tag was created by Brandon's Bookshelf, the Philosophy of Reading tag. So this is going to be 20 questions, how and why we read. If you haven't discovered Brandon's channel yet, I'm linking down below, and I'll link his video on the Philosophy of Reading down below so you can check it out. I really enjoy how deeply he goes into book. I really like watching his channel. So question number 1. What's most important? A good character, plot, or message? So to me, I find a good character is the most important thing of all. And a good character doesn't mean a kind character or a character that I identify with or anything like that. It just means, they might be a completely unlikable character, but I mean just a really complex, well-rounded character. Because if a character is executed well, you will find a message in it and there will be wisdom in it. And plot, I like plot, but I prefer to see what makes a person tick, why they are the way that they are. I like those deep psychological dives into characters. So, I do like plot, but if I had to pick one of those three things, I would go with a good character. Question number 2. Should one read books about ideas or opinions they disagree with? I think it's really important to challenge how and why you think a certain way that you do. I think it's really important to understand where someone's coming from. And the only way you're going to do that is by listening to differing opinions. And I think that's really critical. It's a very unpopular opinion, but most people hold the beliefs that they do for a reason. It's not to say that it's right, and it's not to say that it's wrong, but usually people hold opinions that they do for a specific reason because they've experienced something in their own lives. Doesn't make how they behave potentially fair or accurate, but I think it's important to see how someone else is coming at a certain situation and try to understand why they feel and think the way that they do, because that's hopefully what someone would also think of your own opinion. And it's really easy to judge, and it's much more difficult to try to understand because we're all living such dramatically different lives. Even if we live right next door to one another, our lives are going to be so completely different, and we're going to hold completely different views. I think it's good to read about those different opinions that you disagree with. Number 3, as tech advances, what do you think will be the role of books? I think books are always going to be important. And of course, I'm biased because I love books, obviously. But books can be lost to time, but we have books that we've been reading for hundreds and thousands of years. So I don't think that's necessarily going to go anywhere because culturally speaking, we're storytellers. And so the story is going to continue to live on and be retold because that's how we learn. That's the best way that we learn, because you're never going to be able to experience everything in life. I don't think that's going anywhere unless people evolve into something different. Who knows, right? But I don't think books are going anywhere. They're going to continue to be important. Number 4, how important are summaries, reviews, and art in your book choosing? Summaries are important because it's good to have a sort of gist as to what the book is about. Reviews, I feel, are important to a point because I tend to like a lot of things that other people dislike. You'll find varying opinions on everything. And sometimes the books that I feel really spoke to me, the general population didn't enjoy. So, and also it depends on the type of book you are reading. So, for example, if you're looking at reviews, a really popular review site is going to be Goodreads. And depending on the genre that you read, you have to take into consideration what those reviews will be skewed towards. And sometimes even a negative review can signal to me that I want to read something, because it really depends on what the person didn't like about the novel might really intrigue me. And so I'd still read it even if it had negative reviews. Because I tend to really enjoy slower paced novels that are really character centered. So that's not everybody's cup of tea. So, reviews can be helpful. Recommendations, I find, are one of the biggest things that will make me want to read a book. And then when it comes to art in choosing a book, I mean, the art can definitely help. If it's eye-catching, it'll make me stop and look at a book that I possibly wouldn't have even noticed otherwise. It's not the only reason. That's not the reason I would buy a book, is because it has beautiful art on the cover. But definitely, especially of older novels, I'll look for editions with cover art that I like better, so long as it's the edition and the translation that I'm looking for also. So I'm a sucker for a nice looking book. Question number 5, should one ever skim or scan a book? I'd say no. Hard no. Unless, definitely not if it's fiction. The only skimming that would be done would be if it was some sort of reference text that you were looking for specific data. Otherwise, hard no. Number 6, should reading always be enjoyable? I think this depends. It depends. People read for completely different reasons. And I don't think a book does need to be enjoyable all the time. Sometimes I read extremely unenjoyable books, but sometimes I get the most out of those books. One book in particular I can think off the top of my head was Blood Meridian. I read that this year by Cormac McCarthy, and it was not in any way an enjoyable book, but it has been possibly one of the most profound novels I've ever read. And so it's a great point. It's not about the enjoyment. It's about what you are getting out of it. And that isn't always enjoyable, but growth isn't always enjoyable either. It doesn't always have to be enjoyable. It's nice when it is, though. Number 7, is it important to be well read? I think it depends on what well read means to you. It might mean something completely different to everyone else. To me, what well read is reading in several different genres across lots of different topics. I like to delve into literature from across the world in different genres. That's important to me. I mean, is it important to everyone else? I think if you are constantly reading the same genre over and over again, and you don't leave that genre, I think you could be missing out. I think it's good to branch out of what your comfort zone is. I think that's always important. So, number 8, what is your book buying process? So, I usually have very stringent book buying process, I think, as most people who love books, because buying too many books can become an issue. I like having a very large TBR. I'm a mood reader, so I'll have plans of books that I want to read in a year, but as opposed to what I'm going to read next, I sometimes have absolutely no idea until I'm ready to read that next book, and then I'll go to grab that book. So anyways, that's all to say that I have a really huge TBR, and so I usually have to be very mindful of how many books I'm bringing in as opposed to how many books I'm reading. I think in comparison to a lot of people on BookTube here, I don't read, I think, anywhere near as many books as people tend to on BookTube. My reading challenge every year is about 40 books, so that's my goal. I like to move through books slowly and have time to think about it and contemplate, which isn't to say that other people don't do that. To each their own. I'm not sure what everybody else's process is. But I will say that usually if I buy a new book, my process usually is that I have to read that book either very quickly, or else I can buy it and maybe not read it immediately, as long as it's maybe a book in a series that I'm already started. Although I haven't read a book in a series in quite some time, so that hasn't been true for quite a while. But I will say that this year I bought a lot of books, a lot more than I have in a really long time. And it might be because of the situation that we find ourselves this year, but books make me happy, so I felt like I needed a little pick me up, and so I bought quite a few books this year, which I'm pretty excited about. Number 9, what is your reading process? Well, I guess I maybe said a little bit in the previous question, but I'm a mood reader, so I'll finish one book, and then depending on what is appealing to me or jumping out off the shelf on my TBR, I'll move on to that book, and then I'll read that book until it's completed, and then I almost need to take a break and just sit with my thoughts about that book for a while. I don't immediately go on to my next book. Oftentimes I'll be listening to a book in audio version, an audio format, while I am reading another book. Obviously not at the exact same time, but I'll have 2 books going at the same time. Yeah, I like to take a little time and sit with my thoughts and ponder a book. And then as soon as when I'm done a book too, when I'm thinking about it, that's when I also like to read reviews about the book. I don't like reading too deeply into reviews prior to reading the book, but afterwards I like to, because sometimes it helps me focus what my feelings were about certain scenes or themes in the book. And oftentimes I'll disagree or I'll agree, and so that helps me form my thoughts about the books that I read. Number 10, how do you use what you read? Oh, I don't know if I really use it, but I enjoy it. Number 11, if you could download a book into your brain, would you still read? Man, I would love to download books into my brain. I would still read though, because I do derive a lot of enjoyment from the experience of reading the book, because it's very different. I think, I mean, and downloading a book to your brain would be different than an audiobook, but the experience of an audiobook is much different than reading. And I still really enjoy reading, and I don't think I would ever stop. Number 12, what are your views on rereading a book? I don't do this very often. I can't even remember the last time I reread a book. It's been a very long time. I think I was in high school, possibly, the last time I did that. I think it's a great idea. I think it's good to reread books. I feel like when I sit down to write a review, I'll go back and reread certain portions of books, but from books from beginning to end, I haven't done that in, as I said, a really long time. I think it can be very beneficial because you obviously are a different person. I would assume you should wait some time before rereading a book, although obviously you can reread a book whenever as soon the moment you finish the book. But you're going to experience and interpret that book differently every consecutive time that you read it. So I definitely think there can be merit to it. I just haven't had a chance to really do that because I always think of the next book. There's so many books I want to read to take up that time rereading another book. I just haven't had that opportunity yet, or the will to do it yet. Number 13, what makes a book good? Well, I don't know. This is very subjective, and it's hard to say because it can be any number of things that make a book good. It could be good characters, it could be good plot, it could be great dialogue, it could be beautiful writing. I mean, it depends on the execution. It's the execution that makes a book good, I think. And you take any of those elements that are well done and mix them with bad execution, and there can be no saving a book. But yeah, I think it would be good execution. And then number 14, what makes a bad book? I guess execution. But another thing I think that makes a bad book for me would be very one-dimensional characters. That's a terrible book for me. And even, I mean, what makes a terrible book for me too is heavy-handed writing, like very, very obvious and pushy writing. I guess that also makes a bad book to me. 15, how do you feel about not finishing a book? It's very rare that I do not finish a book. Very rare. I have this like small little section of my bookshelf of books that I've started and given up partway through. And some of them, only a few of them I've actually like gotten rid of because I don't think they're going to be my thing. I think rather some of these books, I was maybe not in the right frame of mind to read them. So I think I'm going to give them another go and see what happens. Maybe I'll make a video about all the books that I've given up with the thought of starting up again. Number 16, should the author's personal life matter at all? I think it depends. I think it really depends. I think we should be able to separate the art from the artist. Because at the end of the day, I'm a proponent of everyone's privacy. I don't need to know the ins and outs of this person's life to be able to appreciate what they have dedicated their life to. If a person has dedicated their life towards hatred, I can't get behind that. But most people are multidimensional. If there is nothing redeeming about anything that this person has to say, then that's something else entirely. But there's humanity in everyone, and it's important to not write people off so easily. And if you choose to not read something because you feel that that person's work is offensive or whatever the case may be, then definitely don't. That's definitely every person's right and prerogative. I also don't believe in censorship also, though. I don't believe in that. So it's a messy question. To me, there's no simple answer to it. I think it depends, and that's very vague and broad. That's the world we live in. I think it's good to always keep an open mind, to always try to chew on the meat and spit out the bones if you can find wisdom in almost anything, if you choose to look for it. Doesn't mean you're going to agree with this person or their views. That was a messy answer to this question. I mean, I don't, what I care is what someone has to say. I don't care about how that person necessarily lives their life. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of people who enjoy reading the novels that criminals write about the murders that they've done and all that. People are fascinated with that. These people have done some horrible things, right? Number 17. If you could read only one genre for the rest of time, what would that be? Oh, can I just say classics? Is classics considered a genre? Is that, I don't know, literary fiction maybe? Perhaps if classics could be a genre, considered a genre, I would say classics. Or if I needed to be more specific than that, perhaps I would go to literary fiction. That involves a lot of stuff. Number 18, do you ever read a book without knowing anything about it? I don't know the last time I may have done this. I've gotten into reading a book without knowing very much. I'm a writer, so I will critique other writers' works that I work with. And so oftentimes I don't know much about the work that I'm about to open up and critique. Judge it blind, you know? Not often will I read a book without knowing anything about it. 19. What author, genre, series, or culture can you just not get into and why? Epic fantasy. I have not delved or dipped my toe into that genre. I don't know if I will, because it feels like such a huge investment of time, and I don't know if it'll be worthwhile. I don't know. And so I haven't, it's a bit intimidating, dedicate that much time to a set of characters and a world or whatnot. So I think that would be, I'm not saying I never will, but that's the one that I find I struggle with. And I don't know if maybe I'll overcome it. I'm not sure. And 20, do you think everyone should read and why? Everyone has their own interests, but I personally believe a lot of people think reading isn't their thing. And I think that it's just because that person hasn't discovered the right author or genre or style of book or narrative that they gravitate to. Like saying you don't enjoy reading is kind of like saying you've watched one horror movie and then decide you don't like movies in general. I mean, you probably just don't like horror movies potentially. But you wouldn't swear off movies simply because you didn't like a science fiction movie, right? Like you would keep going until you found something you enjoyed. And I think that's a lot like reading, but I realize it's not everyone's cup of tea necessarily. I think everyone can be a reader if they hunt long enough for the books that they might enjoy. So, I mean, perhaps I'm also biased because I can't imagine not deriving pleasure from reading. So anyways, so those are my answers. Please check out Brandon's channel and check out this tag that he created. Thank you for creating it, Brandon. Do you have any answers to these questions that are glaringly different from mine? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.